It's probably the most simplest way to do an HDR photograph. So here we have a nice landscape with horses and a house there. But you can see here, if I get the landscape properly exposed, you can see the foreground fine right now. But the problem is the sky is completely white and our camera can't capture that dynamic range. So what we have to do is underexpose the image so we can see the sky. Now the sky looks all good, but the foreground is completely dark. So you can see that there's a tremendous difference here. So how do we get around this problem? Well, the way we get around this problem is by taking two pictures. By taking one picture exposed for the sky and one picture exposed for the foreground. So here's my camera. What you want to do is select the spot metering for your metering mode. Now what this will do is whenever you look through the viewfinder, ew, that's a lot of scuzz on there. Let me fix the focusing point so you can see through the viewfinder. Basically what spot metering is, it's a type of metering mode that when you're looking through the viewfinder, you can see that there's a little box, a little focusing point that you would usually use to tell your camera where you want to focus. But in this circumstance, when you move it around, you're telling the camera where, when, and where to expose. So when I move the box up to the sky and take a picture, that picture is exposed for the sky. But when I go back and take another picture and move the box to the foreground, right there, that picture is exposed for the foreground, and the sky is no longer exposed properly. It's just the foreground. So now what we have to do is go on the computer and combine them inside of Photoshop. Alright, so here are the two pictures. We've got the sky layer, and then we've got the foreground layer right here. Now what I need to do is combine both of these. But before I do that, I need to align them so they're perfectly aligned. Because when I push the button on my camera, the pictures get off alignment just enough for it to be imperfect. So what I'm going to do is select both layers by selecting the first one first, and then holding down my shift key and then clicking the next layer. So I got both of them selected. Now I'm going to go to Edit, Auto Align Layers. I'm going to click that, leave it on auto, and then click OK. Now they're perfectly aligned. Now you see that was just a little nudge, just a little tap, not much of anything, but it's still there and it's still noticeable. So now we're going to combine them. So let's select the top layer and create a layer mask on this. Now with the layer mask selected, I'm going to grab the gradient tool right here. Make it a regular gradient. And then I'm just going to draw a line from top to bottom. And now I actually did that in reverse, so I'm going to draw a line from bottom to top actually. And there you go. Now this needs perfecting. You need to go in here and actually work with this a little bit more. Right about there looks pretty good. So now that just made a smooth transition between the two pictures. There's one thing that happened though, and the foreground layer right here is actually kind of, when you look at the grass, it actually is kind of faded. And I think the reason why it's faded is because the sky was so bright and all that light was coming into the lens, and there was just some light spill, and it just kind of just made the overall picture more white and more faded. So what I'm going to do is select the foreground layer right here, and then I'm going to click auto contrast. That just fixed that little issue that was happening. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is fine tune the sky a little bit more. I'm going to go back to my layer mask, and I'm just going to paint in some more dark areas on the layer mask to really bring out the sky. So I'm going to be using a huge brush, and my opacity is going to be very low. If I had on 100% opacity, I would just
kill it to death. I would pretty much just nuke the whole thing like that. And you may like that look. That might look good just right there, and you might be satisfied. But I just want to kind of ease it in, not do it too much. So what I'm going to do is leave it at about, I don't know, 20%. And then just kind of go in here and just ease it up. Just slightly just kind of draw that back in. Alright, that's looking fine right there. And now I'm actually going to even fade it out even more, just a little bit, because I really don't want that cheesy HDR look, even though this picture kind of has it already because of the halos around the trees. But that's kind of unavoidable. So there it is. Not looking bad. If we look at the before and after, here's the before and here's the after. So it's a pretty significant change, and you don't even have to have any HDR software. You don't have to use the CS5 HDR method. You can just take one picture of the sky, one picture of the foreground, and combine them just like that using layer masks.